So, coming back with a new political take is myself going to commentate on what developments we have in the 2020 presidential Democratic primary. And that is that, obviously, Michael Bloomberg has stepped in. And, I made a video about how this guy, Joe Biden, who is at about 28 to 32%, typically in the RCP national polls, this guy is ahead in, I would say, Nevada and South Carolina solidly, but he is behind on Iowa and New Hampshire, the first two states to vote in the primaries. What this really means is that Joe Biden is having a hard time reflecting his own national numbers on the first electorates and first caucuses, for example. Now, the thing is that the main couple of people that are moderates in the supposed election is that of a picture of Biden, Pete Buttigieg, as well as Amy Klobuchar. Now, Biden at 28%, Pete Buttigieg at about see, this is the trick. He went from 11 and change to now he's at 9, okay? And falling. This Amy Klobuchar was at 3, basically. And now the new variable that's in the race is mini Mike Bloomberg. This closeted homosexual, apparently, is running for president. This late 70s type of guy, this George W. Bush sucked in a vacuum and aged another 20 years is basically how we would describe how this man looks like. And in all reality, he's just another sellout, a neoliberal one. And this guy is not a populist. This guy is not a progressive by any means, insofar as this Democratic Party is heading. This guy is a sellout. I mean, he was a pre-Republican, mayor of New York City after Giuliani. This guy has a terrible record, really, insofar as taking away rights of citizens, including banning certain sugary drinks or banning types of salt, sorts of things that he himself, as a billionaire, I must say, must think that he has some sort of God complex, that he knows better than the common man. So like I said, not a populist, not for the people. And this man started off with no popularity, of course, because nobody likes this guy. But what he does have going for him is that he has a net worth of over $50 billion, which is over 12 times as much as Donald Trump has. And he's a very rich man, so this guy has unlimited capital to go off of, apparently. He has spent tens of millions of dollars on ad campaigns in a lot of states, even Arizona, for example, in places where you wouldn't think it's so necessary. And why would he want to do that? Well, because he's irrelevant. He's trying to convince people that he's a competent man. He has the money benefit, but other than that, he is very lacking. Biden, in a quarter, 2019, had gained about $25 million, or roughly equal to that of what Mayor Pete Buttigieg got. Now, that sounds like a lot of money. That's not great at all for a guy that's the front runner. Whereas Michael Bloomberg, the first month he's in the race, spends $50 million on ads. And so you're saying, well, how much does he fundraise? He probably fundraises about 7% of what he spends. Therefore, he's bankrolling his own campaign. And, the argument was with Trump, well, he's a billionaire. He's going to pay for everything. And, artificially get in office. Well, this guy's 10 times worse than that, literally. This guy is so astroturfed, and he really does not have a clear path forward to the nomination. And that, I think this guy's running for vanity. I feel like this guy is in his 70s, and he knows he has no other chance to be president, so he's doing it now. And what he's in fact doing is that, he had claimed that he wanted to be a guy that would keep the nomination away from Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, whom Obama have gone against the nomination for the 2020 election because they want to instate a wealth tax. This wealth tax would tax every dollar you make, 2% of that, for example, on every dollar you make after $1 billion, I think. So theoretically speaking, they would exact a tax on the world's richest people, right? America's richest people, and yet Michael Bloomberg, one of those men, does not want that tax to be hiked. Maybe because you can't loophole your way out of that one, perhaps, but The point is, though, is that he's trying to take away the vote from the progressives. Now, what he's doing is that he's taking away from that moderate, neoliberal, centrist, Democrat sort of coalition, and he's subtracting those points, and he's just outright taking them from maybe Biden and Buttigieg to form a foothold in the Democratic primary that is about 5% wide and about $50 million deep. Buttigieg got a couple of his points revoken after a surge in Iowa and New Hampshire, taking the lead there to be usurped by Bloomberg. What resulted is that Iowa went for Buttigieg again still, but he had lost New Hampshire's lead, which is very important for a guy that is so small time and so bad at, in the prospects of the electorate. I mean, this guy is a homosexual. He won't get the black turnout. He's unreasonable. But nevertheless, what we can observe is that this mini Mike Bloomberg has no chance in the presidency. This guy came in so late into the race that he has about no chance to get win the nomination because he's already going to miss the first 4 states. He filed in Arkansas, I think, so he's going to get in on Super Tuesday on some of those states. There's not enough states to go around if you're going to stay at 5%, man. And, he could spend all the millions of dollars he wants, but, I mean, he's going to hit a ceiling at some point. And what's ironic is that what he could do is spend money and maybe get himself to 7%, cannibalize Buttigieg, and then go not even close to Biden's numbers. But what he can do is wait until Biden dies or, gets a stroke and drops out of the race, which is very possible in this race where Biden is 77, Sanders is 78, Warren is 70, right? We have a race with a bunch of old people, so any of these people could die really realistically in the next couple of months. So if Biden dies, then we'll assume that the majority of those votes go to Bloomberg. Well, I mean, this guy's like 74, 77 himself. I mean, really? How much healthier could he be than Biden? He's sharper, yes. So was George W. Bush sharper than Trump by a lot of metrics. So what are we talking about? I mean, who's the shinier turd is what I'm asking. And in reality, that's what the electorate are asking. They're comfortable with Biden. They have no idea who Bloomberg is. And if they do, then they're going to have a bad position on him. Bloomberg has effectively alienated any centrist Democrat that is pro-gun. Why? Because he wants to seize them. This guy, Bloomberg, actually had invoked the seizure of weapons in Virginia recently because he had funded a lot of campaigns, like the Senate race in 2018 in New Hampshire. He invested millions of dollars in 2018 and other years, in other elections, for example, to flip red counties blue and do all of this billionaire finagling of the electorate so that he can get his anti-gun legislation passed and do a whole sort of thing to where that he's effectively a lobbyist that's running a campaign at the same time. He's like Dick Cheney with money. And you know what? That's not a good thing for the electorate, and I just can't see how this guy could win. And I just think he'll maybe empower Bernie Sanders or Warren to push closer to Biden and hurt the electorate. Like I said, this does not help the election against Trump at all. He's basically helping ensure that it's either going to be a bruised and vacuumed up Biden centrist against Donald Trump, or it's going to be a firebrand socialist acolyte that's going to certainly lose the centrist vote in 2020, like Bernie Sanders. There's no feasible way in which I can see Michael Bloomberg becoming president or even vice president. I mean, he really doesn't have a chance of anything. He's too damn old to do anything, basically. Like, if you said, oh, Mr. Bloomberg, you're running for president, okay, are you going to run again in 2024? I don't think so, right? Even Joe Biden says basically that he's going to run for one term. Would he even survive the half of that term? I don't think so, right? So I don't see any way, any possible way this could end up working for these Democrats. And it's really a shame because it's the worst for everybody, really. I mean, if you have a centrist and you're a socialist, you don't like them, and they lose. If you're a moderate and you have a bunch of weak candidates like Bloomberg and Biden, then you're gonna be upset when Bernie wins and then loses to Trump, right? This whole 2020 election is a mess. I would want to personally say that I don't think that this will look any better. I might think that Trump could lose eventually if there's a recession. But certainly with the impeachment, it is helping his numbers. I do not think that there's any way that a Bernie Sanders could possibly ever win. Why? Well, because he's too socialist. And I mean, a lot of people like, let's talk elections, you know. Ethan Kelly is way too socialist and just cannot see that a guy like Bernie Sanders cannot win. And yet, people like Bloomberg are just ensuring that that happens. And it is just ludicrous, this utter vanity that this man possesses, in which he gets motivated to run for president against these socialists and just ends up getting these guys elected anyway, like in the roundabout sense of it, through his millions of dollars that are misspent on a failed legacy of a failed mayor of the world's largest prominent American city. It is completely pathetic what he is doing, and there is no redeeming factor to this man besides just watching the Democrats run like a bunch of cows, freed from the slaughterhouse, into another slaughterhouse, which is Donald Trump. I mean, this is just tragic, really. This is so amusing. It's a tragic comedy, man, and it is god-awful what is happening. And I just don't see. Look, talk about electoral winter all you want. Talk about demographics, but let's talk about the demographics that would utterly vote socialist. And I would say that's less than 50% of the electorate, which means Donald Trump wins. That's my prediction for 2020. Mini Mike Bloomberg has no chance. He's barely a footnote in history. If you look up a Wikipedia article about the 2020 presidential primary of the Democrats, in 5 years, let's say, will Michael Bloomberg be in there? Maybe. The same way Rick Santorum was in that 2016 Republican primary, where he was like in, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 debates before he dropped out. That's exactly what I'm seeing for this guy. This guy, he has no chance. Utterly pathetic. I mean, to the point that if it weren't for his money, he would have dropped out. It would have been irrelevant. It's completely pathetic what I'm saying. And I just want to leave you guys with the note that I hope things get interesting in this debate. I am looking forward to these 2020 presidential debates forward. I mean, there's one on Thursday, so I'll leave you guys with that.